The farm in Tennessee was very rural, no electricity. Anything you done had to be done with manpower or animal power, and the farm had 313 acres in it. Part of it cultivation, part of it pasture land, and part of it woodland. And we, my dad was very frugal in handling the resources of the farm. He if he sold some of the timber people would cut the trees, take the trunk, and leave the limbs, and we'd cut the limbs up for firewood. Nothing went to waste. So he was very. It was hard work. He worked 6 days a week. Um, he was. He and Mom both were very religious people, and they. It was. It was a hard life, but a good life. I had. There were 9 children. Uh, and there were 7 boys and 2 girls. Um, one 3-year-old died with some kind of a brain disorder, and the next one was hurt at school, injured on arm, with a bigger boy slinging around and around, and it set up blood poison, and he died from that. Back then they didn't have anything for blood poison. It was in the mid-late 30s, mid-30s probably. Um, and to make a long story a little bit shorter, there's only 2 of us left, me and my brother Wilson, and he's 88. But all of the farming was done with mules. The 2 mules that we had at that time was almost like family, big, powerful mules, and very gentle. You could do most anything you wanted to with them, and it was a good life, but a hard life. In fact, all of it in the 30s was pretty tough. So the county fair was I guess it was a 2-3 day fair. That was a big time in the county. Nobody could afford to go to the state fair. It was 40 miles away, and didn't have the time or the resources to go. But my mother, even in her late 80s, still making things to put in the fair. She made little dresses, and Pam was 2-3 year old at that time, and she'd send all the dresses to Pam with the blue ribbon still on them. And she got to where she won so often that they asked her not to enter every year. And I've got some things that I made for the boys' hobby fair when I was 10 years old. I still got them at home. And I think that's pretty remarkable. They're 80 years old. A little wagon like we used to play with and haul wood on and that sort of thing. But was drafted in the Army, they were pretty tough on, you know, pretty tough training, and were some of the city boys that they just about done them in. But most of the country fellas, it was like a vacation for us. We didn't mind at all. It was a different world. It's completely different. It was not very far from Australia, the southern part of New Guinea. But there wasn't any communications between the natives and the Americans because of the language barrier. And one thing I did notice that I don't know if they learned it from the Americans or what, but they had roads and truckers, army trucks, and you'd see a native out there thumbing a ride. And by the time he stopped, that truck would be fully loaded with people. There'd just be one showing, and the rest of them would come out of the bush and jump on the truck. And the Philippines, when we got there, we had equipment for 10,000 men. We were then a replacement depot, and stored the vehicles and trailers and all that stuff in the rice paddies. It's the only place we had to put it. And as an elderly Filipino man along the road, and I asked him, I said, does it rain like this all the time here? He said, no, rain season's next month. And he wasn't being funny either. So it was a different environment altogether. But their language was Tagalog, and I'm not very good at learning different languages, but I did learn a little of it. Still learn to still remember some of it, but it's not nice. It was all about the same. It was delighted to see us there, and they're very thoughtful people, the Filipinos are. Even today we have some Filipinos in our church. And once you go through that, you establish a feeling for those people that were in the invasion, the natives. You always have a special relationship with them. There's a man and his wife, Filipinos, both MDs in the church, and you can tell they still, I guess that happened before they were even born, but there's a special relationship between them, and I guess always will be. I know it will be with me. We thought they were, after New Guinea, we thought they were really a special kind of people, and they were. Yes, one close friend, his name was Otis Morton. Thought I'd lost it there for a while. But he had been in the CCCs. I don't know if y'all know what the CCCs is or not, but it's a camp, was a camp in the 30s for troubled teenagers. And it kind of helped me along and showed me how to make my bed and all. And but he went one way and I went the other. I went to the Pacific, and he went to the Europe Theater, and I went and visited with him after I got back. He lived about 70 miles from where I did, and we had a good time fishing. Ate a lot of catfish, and about a year and a half later, he was killed in an accident. But there was a lot of boys in there that I knew before I went in. One of my best friends, a cousin, and went in the first 18-year-old draft, 1943. So there was a lot of them that I knew before I went in service. But he was the one that I made it while I was in service and mounted something. It was a happy time for most of us. Some would get a letter once a month, and sometimes I got one a month, and sometimes they'd get lost and not get there at all, because no planes were flying like they are today. So it was, they'd holler out mail call, and we'd gather around and wait for your name to be called. And some was always getting something, and some never got anything. And to me, it reflected some on what their relationship was with their family back home. And some of them probably never did write their parents, because we had a commander that would ask you to or tell you to write your parents and let them know you're all right. I had a package from my mother on Christmas Eve, 1944, at Hollandia, New Guinea, and it was a package of cookies. And a lot of times the package would be crushed, crumbled, but this one looked like it just didn't get damaged at all. And that was something to have, get a package from your home on Christmas Eve, and it got there Christmas Eve. Something special. Just the fact it got there not damaged or broken up, and a lot of times the humidity would be so high that any cookies or anything like that would mold and would not be usable. But we ate them all. Yes, one thing you're reminded of, not necessarily learned it, but if you want something done, do it yourself. That way you're sure it's done and it's done right. But while it seems to be the last one on the list, in the Philippines, after I made sergeant, I worked from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 8 o'clock the next morning. It seemed like forever. And there was no food available for the guards during that 12-hour period. And the Red Cross had a hangar tent that the Army had erected for them, and they had donuts in there. And they wouldn't agree to let me go in and get some donuts for the guards. So I broke the lock and helped myself. And the Provost Marshal called me in the next morning and said they had an investigation going on. Somebody broke in the Red Cross tent the night before and broke the lock, got in and took some donuts. And I said, well, you don't have to do an investigation. I said, I done it. And he said, "Why did you do it?" And I told him. The guards were hungry. I was hungry, and they had truckloads of them in there, and they wouldn't let me come in and get them. And he said, "Well, there won't be any investigation." But from that day forward, we didn't have any problem getting donuts when we wanted them. We didn't have to break the lock anymore.